right, it's time to take a look at some winners and losers from the first week of NFL free agency. Welcome into Four Verts. My name is Harrison Graham. Lots of new players signing with new teams. Big deals, small contracts, winners, losers. Let's dive into it. We'll start with some winners. Trenches players. From Milton Williams to Will Fries to insert above average offensive or defensive lineman. One thing is clear. I think teams looked at the Super Bowl and saw that Philadelphia overwhelmed the dynastic Chiefs in the trenches, and they've acted accordingly. If you are an average or better offensive or defensive lineman in your 20s, you got paid for the most part. There were a few exceptions, like James Daniels had to take a lesser deal because he was coming off injury, and guys that are injury prone may not get quite the money that they were hoping. But hell, even Will Fries, 5 for 87, played in 5 games last year, broke a tibia. Yep, sign me up, Minnesota. I think, look, football's won in the trenches. It's a cliche. It's not the complete truth, but I think it's a big part of it. And teams saw what happened in the Super Bowl. Philadelphia's O-line dominated. D-line dominated. Won the Super Bowl. Took down Patrick Mahomes of the Chiefs. Made them look bad, to be honest. So, trenches players, good week for those boys. They got a lot of money. Okay, speaking of which, the Chicago Bears. Because I think they did a good job of loading up their trenches, but they didn't get stuck paying average guards major money. Instead, they traded for 2 guards who make good money, but Jonah Jackson and Joe Thuney are not making more money than even Will Fries or Aaron Banks. And sure, you trade up a 6th and a future 4th to get those 2 players, but to me, trading day 3 picks for players who are better than most of the free agents, especially Thuney, better than all of them, and Jackson, who's better than most of them, and getting them on a lesser contract for day 3 draft picks, that's a huge win. They get Drew Dalman, honestly one of the more reasonably priced contracts, still a big contract, but in comparison to other offensive and defensive linemen, you get them at $14 per year. You take kind of a swing with Dio Adengbo. That's probably their one overpay, but he's 25 years old. That's a calculated swing. Grady Jarrett comes in, and again, a lot of money, but then you see a guy what's his name going to Minnesota? I'm drawing a blank. I'm an idiot. Jonathan Allen, thank you very much. 3 for 60. You're like, it's a pretty good deal. Veteran, bring him in here. They add Zacchaeus at receiver. He's got some speed. The Bears attacked the trenches hard and smart. They recognized it's an issue. The O-line, the D-line's got to improve. Let's go after it. Oh, Joe Thuney's available? Let's trade a 4th-round pick for him. Oh, Jonah Jackson, our head coach, feels strongly about him. Things just got kind of weird in LA last year, still only 28. We'd rather trade a 6th for him than pay Will Fries coming off a major injury. So, like what they did there, they addressed major needs, and I think they did so in a pretty reasonable way. Okay, let's go to the Washington Commanders. I don't love every move they did. Like the Javon Kinlaw signing, for example, is not one I'm a fan of, but I like the Debo trade. 5th-round pick, even if he's a little past his prime. A guy like Cliff Kingsbury, obviously their GM Adam Peters came from San Francisco. I like that. Get another weapon for Jaden Daniels. You bring back Bobby Wagner. Leader, still a good player. Zach Ertz, still a good player. And they were pretty consistent with a lot of this. They re-signed a lot of just kind of role players. Again, I don't love the Kinlaw move, but these other small minor moves add up. And then obviously the big one is the Laremy Tunsil move. We'll get to that here in a second, but that one was huge. I like bringing back Marcus Mariota. He clearly has been a mentor for Jaden Daniels. When he had to play last year, he played pretty well. Schematic fit in that offense, so if he has to play, you feel good about it, and you like him as a backup in that QB room. A bunch of one-year deals otherwise, nothing that's going to blow anyone away here. At the end, you bring Noah Brown back. He had a pretty good season last year, of course, caught that Hail Mary against Chicago as well. But just the Laremy Tunsil trade, I think it's so huge for Jaden Daniels. Like Jaden, we already saw last year, has a chance to be really, really good. It's one season, but if you're betting on it, you'd be betting on him to have a pretty good career. But with his frame, with his play style, you want to limit the hits on that guy, especially in the pocket. It's one thing when he's running around. He's going to get hit sometimes. But now you've got a true blindside protector in Tunsil. You didn't even give up a first-round pick. I get it. You gave up multiple picks. To me, though, that's what you do when you have a quarterback on a rookie deal that you feel really good about. So that was a huge win for Washington, and I like a lot of the other moves they made as well. What do you think is the biggest winner in free agency? A player, a team, a group of players? Let us know. Biggest winner in free agency this year so far is, you fill in the blank. Okay, Minnesota Vikings. I've mentioned Will Fries and Ryan Kelly and some of these contracts that they've handed out, and a couple of them are probably overpays, no question about it. But I will say this. If I'm going to overpay on a position, I want to overpay in the trenches. I think the Aaron Jones re-signing, reasonable deal. 2 for 20, 13 guarantee. Get out of it after this year if you want to. Ryan Kelly was the second best center on the market. Only had to give him $9 million per year, and there's pretty much an opt-out after year one. You bring back Byron Murphy at 18 per year. Initially, that was reported at 22. I like it at 18 per year. Jonathan Allen, 17 per year, can get up to 20 per year. Well, if he gets up to 20 per year, it probably means he played really well. So I like that. They add Javon Hargrave as well. The Will Fries one, I know it's really after 2 years you can get out of it. That's a big money contract for a guy who played 5 really good games last year and is kind of a question mark otherwise coming off an injury, but still a worthwhile swing. And, the NFC North is going to be a physical division. It really, really is. We saw the Packers sign Aaron Banks as well. For Minnesota, all eyes are on the QB situation. Is J.J. McCarthy ready to take over? We're filming this on Friday, so, there's some question marks about the Aaron Rodgers situation. Do they end up getting in on him? Depending on when you watch this, that question could be answered. But if they get good QB play next year, regardless of who the quarterback is, obviously they're going to be a force because they have a really good roster on both the offensive side of the ball with their skill group and offensive line, and their defense at all 3 levels now is pretty damn stout. Brian Flores, I would expect, is a pretty happy man with some of the investments they've made. Okay, one more winner, then we'll get to some free agency losers. The LA Rams, I like that they were able to figure out the Stafford thing, even if it's just year to year. He gives you the best chance to win, and they were very close to being in the NFC Championship game last year. You bring back his left tackle, Eric Jackson. $10 million's a lot for Tutu Atwell, but they knew they were going to have to move on from Cooper Kupp. So the fact that you bring him back, then the big one to me is adding Davante Adams. So you go Davante Adams with Nakua. Atwell can be your 3. I think that's fine. They could draft a receiver as well. Jimmy Garoppolo gives them insurance at quarterback. I like the Poona Ford addition. Coleman Shelton's a good backup center. He could play some guard as well. Just smart, reasonable moves from the Rams. I think Davante with Stafford is going to have a monster year. And look, I don't think Puka Nacua or Davante Adams either are a top 5 receiver in the game, but you could argue both are top 10, both are top 15, and they're as a duo, it's about one of the best in the league, other than maybe Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. But I think if you're a Rams fan, you got it pretty excited. Your core is back, and you added Davante Adams. Sure, you lost Cooper Kupp, but that's a net win. Like Adams last year still had a monster year, despite starting the season with Vegas and ending it with the Jets. So I'd be pretty pumped if I was LA. Okay, we'll get to some free agency losers in a second, but listen, breaking news dropping this time of year. We're dropping the latest reaction to all of the breaking news. We're putting out draft content, put out my recent mock just a couple of days ago. If you want daily NFL videos, hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications. We've got you covered. Okay, I think the biggest loser in free agency is CJ Stroud. We talked about the Laremy Tunsil trade and how huge it is for the Washington Commanders. But for Houston to ship him out when they already had a weak offensive line, that's pretty bad. Sure, he gets Christian Kirk, which is a nice little weapon there to add to the offense. But no one thinks last year the issue was the receiving core. Sure, they lost Diggs and Tank Dell to injuries, and they needed to add there. But you need to protect CJ Stroud. And they went the opposite way. They traded their one anchor on their offensive line. They also, I think they cut Shaq Mason. And so what do? They signed Laken Tomlinson, who was one of the worst guards in the NFL last year. They trade a 6th-round pick for a player that was probably going to get cut in Ed Ingram from the Vikings, another terrible guard a year ago. If I'm CJ Stroud, I'm like, what the hell are we doing? Like, I had this awesome rookie year, and last year – I got sped up because the O-line was an issue, so you trade my only guy? If you're the Texans, you could argue this is the worst offensive line in the NFL. Titus Howard is their best offensive lineman. He was not a good player last year. Like, you need him to bounce back in a major way, and you probably need to draft and hit on multiple draft picks that can play right away on the offensive line. Like, I think this is pretty dire. I don't know why Houston did this. I guess Tunsil probably wanted a new deal, and they didn't want to go that route, but it's like, all right, man, you better have a plan then. Like, I'd be trying to sign Cam Robinson, who I don't love as a player, but I think you got to get somebody in there that can play at the left tackle position, and they're going to have to draft someone. Guess what? They don't pick until 25th in the first round, and they don't have a ton of draft capital. I guess they have more after the Tunsil trade, but their best picks from that trade are next year. So just very strange behavior by Nick Caserio. I don't think that's how you operate coming off back-to-back seasons with the playoff one. Like, you're trying to take the next step. What's your biggest weakness right now? The offensive line. Do you trade Laremy Tunsil? I don't know. That was weird. What is the biggest, or who is the biggest loser of free agency? To me, it's Stroud. I think that's pretty brutal for him. We'll see what the Texans' plan is to address the offensive line moving forward, but I don't like that unit whatsoever. Okay, a couple more. New England Patriots. Look, they've added some good pieces. I actually think their defense is going to be pretty good as you go through these moves. Harold Landry reunites with Mike Vrabel. I like that addition. Not an unreasonable contract at all. Spillane's a nice linebacker. Carlton Davis, that feels like kind of an overpay, especially seeing DJ Reed only got 16 per year. But, listen, you got a lot of cap, and you got to overpay when you're a bad team, and that's okay. Morgan Moses, actually a good value deal. Milton Williams, to me, that's a little crazy, but good player. For the most part, I'm like, okay, I don't mind these additions, but where is the help for Drake Maye? Yes, you got Morgan Moses. He's a decent, serviceable offensive tackle. You got him at a good price tag. Cool. Matt Collins, he's a fine number 3 type of receiver. Where is the playmaker? I get it. You tried to get Chris Godwin. You were willing to pay big. He didn't choose you. Like, you can only do so much, but this ain't it, man. Like, what, you're going to majorly you're trying to get Cooper Kupp. Doesn't sound like that's going to happen. Even if you do, he's a 3 at this point. I mean, are you drafting McMillan at 4 in the draft? I don't know. Where's the weapons for Drake Maye? I'm not going to rip a team with a lot of cap for adding quality players on defense, but to me, get Drake Maye some help. It's the worst receiving unit in the league. You're going to have to draft multiple guys and hit on them, and last year you were 0 for 2 in that regard. Jalen Polk doesn't look like that good of a player. Maybe he'll bounce back. Javon Baker couldn't get on the field. Got to get Drake Maye a weapon, man. Okay, San Francisco 49ers. Some of this is just, look, I think we saw it last year in the season. You're seeing it now. They kind of got away with the massive swing and miss for Trey Lance, trading up all those picks and that capital to go get him. Eventually that catches up to you, though. Like, sure, Brock Purdy, getting him in the 7th round, you're like, oh, who cares if you miss on Lance? We got Purdy. It's not just that you miss. You traded all that capital to go get him. You need those picks because you need to draft good players that are affordable when you pay a quarterback, because they're about to pay Brock Purdy. So they've had to get rid of a bunch of guys. They had to get rid of Debo. They might even get rid of Brandon Ayuk. They haven't really signed anyone that notable. I like the DeMarcus Robinson signing. He played pretty well for the Rams last year. But, I think it's caught up to them. They're big contracts and that Trey Lance situation, because you lost draft picks for what could have been 2, 3, 4 starters potentially had you hit. The Mac Jones thing, certainly interesting. When they traded up for Lance, there was the rumor they were going to take Mac Jones because Shanahan really liked him. Now he's in the building. Couple thoughts on the Niners real quick. One, got to hit on some draft picks. They're picking 11, so they're going to be picking high in each round. For sure in the first round, you got to hit, and you got to find a couple other starters in the draft as well. And then 2, what are you doing with Brock Purdy? Are you paying him now? And if you are, how much are you paying him? You giving him the Tua deal? Like, I would play this year out, especially now that some of his toys are gone. Is George Kittle getting extended? Is he a long-term piece? I would think they'd try to get that done. But I think entering next year, like, there was a ton of hype coming into last year. They're all in this year. They paid Ayuk. They made it work with Trent Williams. They made him whole. Christian McCaffrey. They had a bunch of injuries. It was an ugly year. I guess to their benefit, it could be there's not going to be as much hype this year. There's a lot of pressure on Brock Purdy going into 2025 because he did not have his best season last year, and he just lost some key pieces. So it's going to be interesting a couple of months for San Francisco. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of 4 Verts. Appreciate everybody for tuning into the show and supporting the program. Hit that subscribe button, help us grow. We'll see you next time.